Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage for always betting on Black. Back with another video, but before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. So we're back once again, another video where we're honoring one of our great warrior scholars, one of the esteemed ancestors, Walter Anthony Rodney, who is most known for his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. He was born, of course, 23 March 1942 in Georgetown, Guyana. Walter Rodney was a prominent Guyanese historian, Pan-Africanist, and political activist, as well as a revolutionary academic. So when we say revolutionary academic, someone who was a scholar activist, this is someone who did not simply rely on their mere scholarship and their writing as a way of actually engaging in helping their communities move forward. But he actually engaged in activism, prominent activism, that unfortunately led to his assassination on the 13th of June, 1980 in Georgetown, Guyana. So let's get right into it. Walter Rodney, he attended the University College of the West Indies in 1960. In 1966, he earned a PhD in African history. In 1966, at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, England, at the age of 24. So this brother was a brilliant scholar, of course, extremely intellectually minded, even though he came from a working class family. But as we know, many of the greatest of our warriors, the greatest of our scholars, the greatest of our people tend to come from humble beginnings, because we had that internal drive, not only to do better, but to also fight against the structural and institutional barriers that tend to, unfortunately, remain omnipresent in Black life throughout the world. His PhD dissertation, A History of the Upper Guinea Coast, 1545 to 1800, focused on, of course, the slave trade in the Upper Guinea Coast. It was acclaimed for its originality in addressing issues in a manner that typically weren't addressed. So he had teaching posts at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. He was good friends with the then president, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who of course was a prominent Pan-Africanist. He was most noteworthy for having Kiswahili be the state language, right, the official language of Tanzania. You know, unfortunately, many African nations at the time had their official languages being that of the oppressors. And he's widely known for, of course, writing the seminal text. I mean, if you haven't read this book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, you need to. You're playing games. Where in which he critiques not only capitalism, but colonialism. And he talks about dependency theory. He really goes into dependency theory. If you ever get a chance to read some of the work of Emanuel Wallerstein, who of course is an American sociologist, who much of his work focuses on dependency theory, and talks about how core countries, colonizing countries, the mother countries, extract, of course, resources from periphery countries, which of course are the colonized countries. And as a result, they're able to develop their own economies at the expense of what the colonized nations. And he really touches on that and how we underdevelop Africa. But he also touches on some other issues. He touches on neocolonialism. We know his good friend Kwame Nkrumah, who was of course the first president of Ghana, he wrote a book on neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, which many argue led to the CIA-backed coup that removed him from office in Ghana. And when he talks about neocolonialism, we're talking about the global North exploiting the global South. And this is something that unfortunately we still find happening today in a myriad of ways. We could talk about structural adjustment programs with the World Bank or the IMF. But Walter Rodney really was a man ahead of his time. Also, in his text, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, he talked about African culture, traditional pre-colonial African culture. He talks about the patriarchal nature of West African societies in particular, and even Central African societies. So he really goes in, he talks about the role of women, the role of Queen Mother, and how elite women in the pre-colonial African cultures or early African cultures. So we don't want to center African history around the European encroachment on the continent. He talks about how for elite women, they were positions of power for elite women in African societies, politically, economically, and socially. And he touches on how when Europeans came in and implemented their cultural norms onto the African societies, Black women, African women lost their positions of prestige politically, socially, and economically. And so this is just one of the things that he really touches on in his seminal text. Unfortunately, he was assassinated on the 13th of June, 1980, Like I said, he was a very prominent political activist. He was assassinated in his hometown, native country of Guyana, Georgetown, Guyana. But what was actually strange about this was he's actually assassinated by a member of what are known as the Hebrew Israelites, right? And so the reason why he was assassinated, we don't really know. What we do know is that there was a strong foothold in the country. There were some American expatriates that moved to Guyana as members of the Hebrew Israelite belief system, or I would call a cult, and that they played a role and actually supplied the material to actually assassinate Walter Rodney. So just wanted to take some time to honor his legacy. I know I cite his work a lot of times in my writing, of the late, great revolutionary Pan-Africanist scholar, activist, a warrior, a true warrior, someone who actually believed in education for the benefit of the people rather than education simply to fill his pockets, Walter Rodney. So if you ever get a chance, make sure you do some more research on him. And if you can, please make sure you read his book. He even touches on in the book about in Liberia, Garvey and the UNIA were going to actually be able to acquire many of the rubber fields in Liberia, and how unfortunately Du Bois played a role in actually stopping that from happening, and that the Cooper Tire Rubber Company was able to then acquire those lands at a 99-year lease and be able to move that into becoming one of the world's leading tire makers and exporters of tires and rubber products. So yeah, so just a lot of history there. But once again, just want to take time to honor today on the 23rd of March, the life, legacy, and work of one Walter Rodney, who is known for his most seminal text, groundbreaking book of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. If you ever get a chance, please, once again, get a chance to read this book, and it really breaks down why Africa and many other global South continents, nations, countries, unfortunately have had an issue of underdevelopment. And they haven't been able to develop at the same rate as countries in the global north. So that's all that I have for now. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Until next time, peace.